Hi, my name is Calvin Liu. I'm with Ventura Enterprise Risk Management, and I'm here to talk about Safehold and GRCi, which is a platform that Ventura has created for the purposes of allowing laypersons to investigate digital evidence of possible employee misbehavior. So Ventura is a services company. We do a lot of work with digital forensics. We've helped the police arrest over 200 individuals for cybercrimes. So we have a lot of experience with the digital forensics as a service and as a professionals. However, we see a lot of issues where customers aren't exactly sure if there's a real problem or not. And for them to pay the $10, $15, $20, $50,000 for us to do our job is not something they want to do unless there's a real problem. And of course, because so much that we do today is through the digital media, right? Composed on the digital media, viewed on the digital media, communicated through digital media, that a lot of evidence for potential misbehavior is right there in that digital media. So the purposes of Safehold and GRCi is to allow a layperson, an HR, a risk committee, an auditor, a comptroller, so forth, to be able to access this digital data that's on their own company systems to see if there's a real problem. If there is a real problem, of course, a professional services company like Ventura is still needed, but knowing that there's a real problem is very helpful in making that decision to go out and get the professional. So the first part of any flow is where we actually acquire the evidence. I'm not going to show that whole flow here because it's fairly involved, but this link will show you exactly what that looks like from a traditional standpoint. And essentially what we're doing is we're taking a industry standard device like this Tableau write blocker, which also requires some disassembly of the machine in question, essentially to create a bit-for-bit copy of the computer storage of the computer in question. So of course, as part of that, rather than have a professional and dismantling and having the specialized equipment, we are going to replace it with this, which is just your simple USB thumb drive, and of course a storage medium temporarily is still needed. So once the image has been acquired, and by the way, we will encrypt it, we will hash it, we will do a number of different security techniques to preserve chain of custody and the integrity of the data. The next stage, of course, is to make some use of it. So if we look at the platform here, this is GRCi, essentially what we have is the ability to then go into this image and pull out useful information. So, of course, we've already uploaded the images in this case. That can take a long time depending on the bandwidth. But one of the things that we can do, for example, is to pull out the web browser history and of course something we've created called proactive HR alerts. So you'll notice that these are still running, and that's because each of those capabilities that you see on this first screen here are actually individual routines for that specific purpose that have been containerized and so are able to run individually or in parallel. So the point of this is that unlike a professional, which is using industry standard tools, a professional like ourselves, we would get the image, we would feed it into industry standard software, go away for 40 hours and come back and read through a 100 megabyte or gigabyte output. Your non-professional doesn't have a need for that, and it's frankly a waste of time, and they would need training to make use of it. So rather than have that, we have created this capability, which is also of course free and unlicensed, to allow them to look just at what they want and to be able to come back and do other things if they so choose. So if we look at the web history from the cookies, you can see here that this is not very easy to understand, but to process these cookies into usable information is a very straightforward task. One of the reasons we're raising funding for is to go out and get this done. But the raw data is already there and ready for processing. So from this web history then, you can then of course get a very good idea of what people are doing with their time, what they should or should not be doing, websites they're visiting, so on and so forth. On the proactive HR alert side, the interesting part here is that this allows a non-professional to quickly understand what the person being investigated might or might not have been doing. Do they have Facebook? Do they have Twitter? What are their identities? Do they have cloud storage installed or just accessed? Different types. Do they have Gmail? other types of non-company email, and then of course are they using other forms of communications like WhatsApp or Telegram. The intent here is to create an ecosystem where a Salesforce like web of applications can go out and pull out whatever information a non-professional might want to see if there's something unusual going on. So the next case will show something a little more specific. So again, already uploaded image. So in this particular case, we're going to look at the folder access history, and of course, while that's running, we'll also kick off a chain of custody report. So chain of custody report, as I mentioned before, when we do the acquisition, as part of the chain of custody process, we have to make sure that the image acquired is the same as the image that's being looked at. And of course, in order to do that, we create a hash at the time of acquisition, which we can then maintain a record of in a secure encrypted format, and so that if any tampering occurs in the future, it will be easily detectable. In addition, of course, you can see on the bottom of the screen that we include other information such as when it was acquired, the way it was done, some information about the hardware, and so on and so forth. On the file access history, essentially, while not every single thing you do on a computer is logged, almost everything is. So this file access history, of course, is not that easily readable offhand, but it is very useful in a number of respects. So for example, if somebody is touching, copying, or even just moving files, a large number of files in a short period of time, that is almost always indicative of some kind of unusual behavior. Could be bad, it could be innocuous, but it's certainly not typical, right? So you can see here these file operations, you can see how the times are listed here along with what actually happened, right? Was the file modified? Was it created? Was it accessed? Whatever. The point is, if somebody is copying or moving tens of thousands of files in a short period of time, that really shouldn't be happening very often. And we'll show in a little bit an example of where this led directly into real results in the case. So up till now, of course, we're just showing examples. Now we'll show that we're actually using GRCi in the field. So in this case, we're going to look at the USB devices. So whenever you plug a piece of hardware into a computer, there is a log of this, right? We also track Wi-Fi and all sorts of other information that's available. But larger companies may block off this USB access, but for our SMB target audience, this isn't practical because they use this for everyday use, everyday work. And you can see this in this example. So from the log, we have the time and date, and of course model type. With this model type, we feed it into a Google search, and it comes back and just dumps the first 5 images it finds. The purpose of this is to allow the layperson to very quickly and easily visually identify what kind of device that is, right? Because a USB disk, USB device, SMI doesn't really mean anything to anybody, right? But the device in question is a thumb drive. And so you can see that in the past, this person was using USB thumb drives for probably moving a file here or there, everyday operations, right? But on this last entry, you can see that they suddenly plugged in a large mass storage device, an external hard drive. And so from this particular time, and this is from a real case, combined with the file access history I showed previously, it showed that the person in question, who was the head of sales for a company that was about to quit, had copied over 5,000 files in the span of a minute or less. When coupled with this USB history, it's quite obvious they were copying this file to an external source. And of course, from this time, we were then able to access a security camera, which then caught the person in the act of actually pulling this mass storage device out of their purse and plugging into the computer in question, right? All of this was enabled because of an acquisition of the computer before the person was able to erase it. The laptop that this person used was turned in after they quit, and it had been completely formatted. This information would have been gone forever. So this is a good example of how a non-professional, an HR person, a compliance person, it could even be an IT help desk person, can go in and do some very preliminary research to see if there's possibly something funny going on. The second part is with Safehold, where we have both cloud and offline access preserved for at least a year, and it could be as long as the customer wants. The evidence is always there for, whatever reason. If the departing person sues the company, if some evidence later comes up that some misbehavior occurred, the Safehold acquired image is forensically sound and preserves chain of custody, and so can be used in a future legal case. Whereas we have seen a lot of examples where IT departments, for example, although they can access some of this functionality, don't know anything about digital forensics, do not preserve the evidence, and often will affect things like file access times and so forth in the course of accessing the information requested. The point of this is to gain the best of both worlds. The capabilities and best practices for the first levels of digital forensics, along with low cost and ease of use for the non-professional, to identify when it makes sense to bring in the true professionals to do the work. The objective for Safehold and GRCi is to enable a much more widespread and inexpensive leveraging of all of this information resident in the digital infrastructure in a small or medium-sized business or corporation for the purposes of mitigating employee risks, anywhere from insider behavior to IP theft to sexual harassment, so on and so forth. So whether you're HR, governance, risk, compliance, and so forth, this is a new arsenal that we intend to add in. And of course, the other outcome is from our own experience and from the ongoing work that we do, as well as requests from customers, we can start building more and more proactive routines to go through and pull out specific behaviors that are of potential interest to a corporation management. Thank you very much.